friendship that'll never ever end.
Run!
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Yo 582. In that neighborhood, my brothers and sisters. If you have time tomorrow, make sure you come join us for our very first reaction live stream, where we will be watching a video from Nick Crowley. But for now, it is Friday, so y'all know who we're about to go back to. Adrian from Coffeehouse. Crime! Back to the coffee man, y'all. And the title of the video is Disturbing Letter Leads Detectives to Murderous House of Horrors. Now, I'm just wondering, did the letter come from the victim or from the freaking murderer? You know what I'm saying, man? I don't freaking know, Bean Team, but we're about to see. But before we see, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you may need. Get what you need, please. We are back to Adrian from Coffeehouse Crime. Y'all got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's go.
Name one thing more turbulent than a hurricane or a bad relationship. While Hurricane Katrina battered the Gulf of Mexico and ripped New Orleans apart, two star-crossed lovers found their place together in the heart of a healing community. But as the floods disappeared and society went back to its normal routine, so did their troubled behaviors and habits. And soon enough, Zach and Addie found themselves back into very heated arguments. As their lifestyle and habits spiraled, so did their relationship. And despite trying to repair what they once had by moving in together, one of them was about to erupt in the most violent way possible. So, who were Zach Bowen and Addie Hall? What caused the two of them to battle almost daily? And how would all of this end? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and once again, you found yourself trapped with a true crime-loving barista. Now, this story has to be one of the most horrific crimes out of New Orleans, and has created what is known as one of the most infamous haunted houses in the city. Hey, if you're not gonna buy that coffee from me, then please at least hit that subscribe button. See it kind of like a Google rating. It's free, and it's good for business. Also, just a general disclaimer here, but this story is not for the faint of heart. That's okay with you, then let's proceed. So, with all of that out the way, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Zach Bowen and Addie Hall.
Get whatever you may need. And I just got to point out from the very beginning, this story making me think about the story that we watched from Kevin from Just Thought Lounge yesterday. Just the fact that it was a couple that should have been broke up, you know what I'm saying? But they just kept getting back together and just kept getting back into, I love you, baby, then I don't love you, baby. I love you, baby, then I hate you, baby. I love you, baby, and now I'm ready to kill you, baby. You know what I'm saying, man? And it just reminds me of that, man. Some of these relationships, people, we just gotta let them go. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. I was in a relationship one time where it was hard for me to let go, and I look at it in hindsight and be like, God damn, man, I should have let go a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna keep it real, man. Let's go.
So, who here remembers Katrina? As many of you know, in August of 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated the southern coastline of the United States of America. But for those of you outside of the United States, more than 1,800 people died throughout her destruction, with an estimated $186 billion worth of damage. No city was more destroyed and devastated by Katrina than New Orleans. In fact, its economy still suffers to this very day. Before Katrina, New Orleans had a population of 480,000 residents. 1 year later, it was 230,000. And even by the year 2020, which was 15 years after her destruction, it had only partially recovered to 390,000. The devastation was honestly cataclysmic. Entire neighborhoods were submerged underwater, buildings ripped away from their foundations, and parks turned into war zones. It is impossible to express how badly this city was annihilated. However, one supposedly sweet thing that emerged from this tragedy was a beautiful relationship between two young adults. You know how it goes. It is that classic trope, a phoenix relationship. Two damaged lovers rise from the ashes to fly into a relationship that burns heavy and bright, healthy and safe forevermore. Except it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this rarely lasts, and this case is no different. At 8:30 p.m. on October the 17th, 2006, New Orleans police received a distressing phone call from a member of staff at the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel. They were calling to report a self-inflicted death. One of their guests had jumped from the hotel's rooftop bar, dropping more than 7 floors onto the garage below. And as you can likely imagine, the prognosis for this guest was not good. He had died shortly after impact. Detectives quickly determined who this man was. That is because, before jumping, he had placed a small plastic bag in his front pocket. Within this plastic bag was a key, a note, and his dog tags, indicating that he likely used to be part of the army. Now, the details behind his death were already seemingly ominous. But when officers opened the letter to look at what was written inside, they realized that this was only the beginning of a terrible and tragic story. So, the big question that all of you have here is, what was written in that note? Well, after unfolding the paper, officers realized that the note said, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. You need to visit my apartment, found at 826 North Rampart Street." Detectives knew that they would be in for a gruesome discovery after reading that letter. But who the victim was, or whereabouts in the apartment they could be found, was not yet clear. However, they did have a name and an address to work with, so with that in mind, they prepared themselves for whatever awaited at North Rampart Street. Dog tags retrieved from the man's body named him as 28-year-old Zach Bowen, and soon enough it was confirmed that he did in fact serve in the military. And as for his victim, well, things were not looking good for his partner. No one had heard from her in over 12 days. And so, logic would tell you it was she he was referring to. But saying that...
Yeah, it's more than likely her, but what a freaking plot twist, y'all. Seriously, man. And it's just so crazy. Just think about the police in that situation. They responded to a suicide accident, or not even accident, incident, I should say. You know what I'm saying, man? Then they examining the man's body. They find a note. They pull it out, and they say that I had to take my life because I took somebody else's life already? That just take it to a whole nother level, man. That is crazy.
Before we get into what officers found in Zach's apartment, let's first look at who he and his partner were. Beginning with Zach Bowen, he was born on May the 15th, 1978 in Bakersfield, California. From the beginning, his childhood seemed to be riddled with depression. Unfortunately, Zach struggled to deal with his low self-esteem and mood throughout the years, and this would also follow him into teenagerhood. When he was 12 years old, Zach moved to New Orleans to live with his father, switching high schools in the process. Unfortunately, his grades were nothing special, but he didn't seem to mind so much about that. And so, at the age of 18, that is when Zach began to work as a bartender. He felt comfortable in this environment, and although the pay wasn't too great, it was a relatively easy and sociable job. It was during this time that he would eventually meet another woman named Lana. Lana was considerably older than he was, but the two would eventually marry and then even have children. As a result, he joined the military to better support his growing family, touring Iraq and Kosovo in the process. It was noted that during his service, he was even awarded several medals for his actions. Sadly though, Zach would see some very heavy stuff during this time. It is even claimed that, while on tour, he had witnessed the deaths of many Iraqis, both military and civilian. And in fact, one of his most violent memories included watching an entire family get bombed. To make matters even worse, he had even befriended that family in the weeks prior. As many of you know, this can lead to extreme cases of PTSD, more formally known as post-traumatic stress disorder in veterans. I'm going to park this part of the story here for now, but we'll get back to this later. Now, instead of leaving with an honourable discharge, Zach would ultimately leave with a general discharge, which he viewed as a personal failure. He really did seem to take this to heart, and others commented about how often he felt ashamed. And as a direct consequence of this discharge, he did not qualify for any compensation afterwards. Concerningly, that was not the only observation made by friends and family. Zach seemed like a completely different person after returning from Iraq. His personality, behaviour patterns, and general mood all seemed to take quite the negative turn, and unfortunately, this would lead to him and Lana divorcing. The divorce naturally left him heartbroken, until one day he would unexpectedly bump into the next and final love of his life. It was in July of 2005, and during a bartending shift in the French Quarter of New Orleans, that Zach would meet a woman named Adrienne Hall. The two of them hit it off almost immediately, and before they knew it, they were newfound lovers. Now, Adrienne, or Addie for short, was a feisty lady more than 2 years his senior. She too was a bartender, and she too had some baggage. It is reported that Addie suffered from bipolar disorder, and she would often abuse her medication, causing rather severe fluctuations in her mood. But that aside, she was an extraordinarily creative person. Addie loved to dance, make art, write poetry, and spend most of her time in the French quarters. In fact, she would often call herself a Puerto Rican. Much like Zach, Addie routinely abused alcohol and sometimes even drugs. And so you can imagine exactly what kind of relationship that these two were getting into. Both of them were damaged, and in addition to this, neither of them knew how to regulate themselves at a healthy level. As a result, their excitement and so-called love for each other was beyond explosive. Many of their mutual friends remember the two getting into very tumultuous arguments. Their relationship was absolutely turbulent. And that was before Hurricane Katrina hit. Only a few weeks later, reports of a Category 5 hurricane emerged, and with almost no time to spare, America braced itself for what could potentially be one of the worst hurricanes in modern-day history. And oh boy, if only the fear-mongering media knew that the deathly claims were right on the money.
And I just want to speak on Hurricane Katrina real quick, y'all, because I think this happened in 2005 or somewhere 2005, 2006, 2007, somewhere within that time frame. But I was in junior high, you know what I'm saying, middle school. And I can just remember like it being all over the news. I can remember seeing those people walking through those floods. And the thing that really effed Hurricane Katrina up was when the levee broke. That's when the flood just got outrageous and dead bodies was literally floating in the streets. You know what I'm saying, man? But I live in Montgomery, Alabama. That happened in Louisiana. I think New Orleans or close by, whatever. But what I'm saying is, I can't tell you the distance between Montgomery, Alabama and New Orleans, Louisiana, but there was even kids and families because some of them started coming to our school, man. Like there was refugees sent to Montgomery, Alabama to live until they got Hurricane Katrina figured out. And it was a group of them. Like I can remember that stuff. It was terrible because I'm not going to say I was friends with none of them, but I can remember one of the girls that I was talking to that was from New Orleans, and she telling me about how they whole house, everything that they had is gone and stuff. And it's just like, wow, man, that issue you see on TV is actually real. You know what I'm saying? Especially me at what, 13, 14 years old. I'm like, wow, man, it's crazy to actually meet you and hear you actually say, yes, that is real. Anyway, let's get back to the story. I just had to speak on Hurricane Katrina because it was a tragedy in U.S. history that nobody should ever forget. And rest in peace to all the people that lost their lives in that. Let's get back to it.
On Wednesday the 24th of August, a hurricane warning was announced along Florida's coastline. By Thursday, talk of a Category 1 hurricane began. That turned to Category 2 by Friday, and then Category 3 on Saturday. Officials urged those in New Orleans to exit, with traffic jams of up to 18,000 cars an hour blocking the highways. By Sunday, those who were left behind were told to prepare for a Category 5. By Monday, August the 28th, more than 80% of the city was now underwater. Power, drinking water, and essential utilities were all destroyed. People were stranded on rooftops, and thousands were feared to be dead. Despite this, Zach and Addie remained in the city for all of it. The two fell in love among all of this destruction, devastation, and chaos. And not only did they survive, but they also decided to work together to help other survivors with food and booze. The two quickly created a bonfire in the middle of their street and cooked food for all of those who came by. Their local community knew them as good humanitarians, and all of a sudden, the two became a glimmering beacon of hope for the rest of the city. Apparently, Addie was known to show her breasts to all police officers who came by, but this could simply be just a dumb rumor. She and Zach were known for making unforgettable cocktails for the people of New Orleans during this storm, and people came near and far for their drinks. Their charitable efforts even appeared in both local and national newspapers, feeding into their ego as a so-called power couple who had recently fallen in love and now have a combined purpose. You could say that things were going very good between the two of them. However, that love story did not last for very long. When New Orleans eventually returned to normalcy, so did the lives of all of its residents. Except conditions and circumstances were now even more challenging than before. And as Zach and Addie were forced back into a life that they never wanted to begin with, they became unhappy yet again. Their altruism became replaced with frustration. Charitable efforts now turned into arguments, and the very purpose that kept the two together slowly started to unravel. From here on out, their relationship became on again, off again, and fights erupted in front of friends quite frequently. To add to this, Addie didn't seem to like Zach's children getting in the way of her, and it seems that he didn't either. Now this is where the relationship goes from bad to even worse. Apparently, their drug and alcohol abuse skyrocketed, and friends couldn't even tell if the two were ever sober or not. By now, the two had been together for just a little bit over a year, and so it is safe to say that the honeymoon phase was not only over, but they were now looking at each other in a more realistic light. In a final effort to repair their already dying relationship, the two decided to move in together to 826 North Rampart Street, but even that process was riddled with issues. So, I'm going to talk about this house, but only for a brief moment. The main reason being is because I'm not superstitious. The home they moved into used to be a spiritual voodoo temple, which led many to believe that maybe there were evil and dark forces playing on both Zach and Addie. I mean—
Oh, hell no! Hell to the no bean team. No. I'm not even superstitious like that either, Coffee Man. But I'm just saying, I'm not moving into no house that used to be a voodoo house. I'm sorry, man. Especially you in New Orleans. Oh, no. That's the cherry on freaking top of the BS. You know what I'm saying? Oh, no, bean team. That is crazy.
In reality, it's just an old Creole cottage which was built in 1829. With its old architecture and carpentry, it is now a listed building, meaning it must be kept to its original condition. When Zach and Addie rented it out, the building had been separated into an upstairs apartment and a downstairs shop. And funny enough, it survived Hurricane Katrina, despite being only 1 meter above sea level. So, although the two signed the lease together, it was only a few days later that Addie discreetly approached the landlord to ask if Zach could be taken off of the contract. The reason for this is because that Addie suspected that Zach was actually cheating on her, and she was not prepared to live with this man if that actually were the case. But unfortunately, her landlord refused this request. Instead, he told her to go back home and try to reconcile with her boyfriend. However, unknown to the landlord at the time, this would actually be the last time that Addie was ever seen alive, because after this, she returned home and then disappeared. On the evening of October the 4th, 2006, and after returning home, Addie was never heard from again. It is believed that she confronted Zach about his affair and told him to get out. You see, Addie had been abused by multiple men before and had finally decided that enough was enough. But unfortunately, Zach had other plans. At 1 AM on the morning of October the 5th, he strangled his girlfriend to death. In his drunk state, he then passed out next to her lifeless body, and after coming around, he allegedly proceeded to do other things to her. The man then got up and went to work as if nothing had happened, and although he appeared quiet around his colleagues, nobody thought too much of it. Colleagues and friends would often ask him where his girlfriend was, but he would correct them and say ex-girlfriend. You see, Zach claimed that she had broken up with him and had already moved back to North Carolina. And although some were rather skeptical of this story, most of them accepted it. Over the course of the next few days, Zach would continue with his nightmarish plan. He dismembered Addie's body with a hacksaw in the bathtub, placing some of her limbs in the refrigerator while placing others in the oven and on the stove. His sick plan initially was to separate bone from the rest of her body, so she could be disposed of more quickly. However, Zach would eventually change his mind after realizing that the job was too big. Instead, after coming to terms with all of the emotional pain and consequences, he decided that he would spend all of his money and live out the rest of his days with indulgence. In an effort to conceal the corpse that he now shared a home with, he kept the air conditioning on 24/7. The house remained around 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius for the next several days. And between October the 5th and October the 17th, that being almost 2 full weeks after Addie's death, he blew through his entire bank account and spent more than $1,500 on good food, alcohol, drugs, and sex. And when his bank balance finally hit zero, well, he decided that he too had to go. Shortly before his death, Zach left an entry in Addie's diary. In it, he wrote, "Today is Monday the 16th of October, 2 AM. I killed her at 1 AM on Thursday the 5th of October. I very calmly strangled her. It was very quick. Halfway through the task, I stopped and thought about what I was doing. The decision to halt the first idea and move to plan B, that being the crime scene you are now in, came after a while. I scared myself, not by the action of calmly strangling the woman I loved for 1.5 years and then desecrating her body, but by my entire lack of remorse. I've known for forever how horrible of a person I am. Ask anyone. And decided to quit my jobs and spend the $1,500 cash I had being happy until I killed myself. So, that's what I did. Good food, good drugs, good strippers, good friends, and any loose ends I may have had. I didn't contact any of my family, so that'll explain the shock, and had a fantastic time living out my days. It's just about time now." Zach then wrote on the wall saying, "I'm a total failure" on one of them and "look in the oven" on another. He also wrote, "Call Lana Bowen" and "I love her." After that, Zach then walked just over half a mile to the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel, where he sat down at the bar and had one final drink while he reflected on his life. And by 8:30 PM, he had ended it. As we know, officers soon found him afterwards, where they also found a letter and a pair of keys to his apartment. In full, this letter read, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. If you send a patrol car to 826 North Rampart Street, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend Addie in the oven, on the stove, and in the fridge, and a full signed confession from myself."
I'm just saying, bro, why did you have to cut her body up and put her in the stove, on the on the stove, in the oven, like, what? He ain't in the bathtub, like, why did he do? I understand maybe he was trying to hide her or something. I don't freaking know. I understand that maybe he was trying to do that to get rid of her body or something, but at the same time, you ain't getting rid of her body by leaving her on the freaking stove. Like, this sounds so crazy what I'm saying, y'all. Like, this when the coffee man started giving us the details about what he did to her after he killed her. See, I'm thinking maybe he killed her and then like that same day or a couple of hours later, he went and committed suicide. No, he started living his best freaking life for the little time that he had left. You know what I'm saying, man? Before he actually decided to kill himself. And it's just the things that he was doing to her body. It's like, why, bro? Seriously, y'all. That was just, it was so crazy, y'all, to the point my damn right up in here, man, my face started twitching. It started jumping, man. Freaking nerves started getting to me. Like, what the freak? Let's go.
Zach Bowen. Officers soon found Addie's body parts scattered throughout the apartment, with Zach's chilling words spray painted across the walls. Now, obviously, with Zach dead, there are no legal or court proceedings. However, there are several interesting side notes that are worth talking about in this story. So, there is one giant elephant in the room here that we absolutely must address. And of course, that is Zach's more than likely diagnosis of PTSD. Now, I know that people love to call a murderer a monster and then simply be done with the story. However, there were some incredibly messed up things going on in Zach's head. Both dysfunctional and avoidable, and also completely unavoidable. We all know that Zach seems to have a rather difficult childhood. However, it was his time in the military that seemed to really shift his personality and his behavior. Experiencing multiple gruesome deaths, especially when some of those are people that you loved and cared about, must have been extraordinarily traumatic. And I can absolutely see how this would develop into a severe case of PTSD. Now, I'm not going to stand here and pretend to know what it's like to be a Marine or someone who suffers from severe PTSD. However, the proof is in the pudding. Many soldiers seem to experience post-traumatic stress disorder after returning from service. Now, these symptoms include the obvious ones such as flashbacks, nightmares, and guilt. But perhaps more specific to Zach's case, it also includes severe self-hatred and extreme anger. Mixing this in with his decision to abuse drugs and alcohol, which, as we know, are behavior-altering substances, and not receiving any support from the military after being discharged, well, those two things in combination with his PTSD, it is quite clear to see how he became a dangerous man in the years following his service. Addie Hall is a victim through and through. However, friends had previously commented on her explosive and aggressive energy while under the influence. She had experienced a very traumatic life, and so it is perfectly understandable why she felt the need to protect herself so fiercely. In his vulnerable state of mind, it is likely that Zach simply couldn't handle it, and that these things likely contributed towards the perfect recipe for disaster. Until finally, he snapped. In the wake of this case, Addie's and Zach's apartment became somewhat of a problem for residents. The landlord and various tenants have all reported paranormal activity coming from the apartment, and it is said that both Zach and Addie haunt the place to this very day. There have been dozens of reports, not just by tenants, but also passers-by, feeling as if they are being watched. Others have said they could hear voices through the walls, and strange sightings of figures in the window. Honestly, it depends if you're superstitious or not, but either way, this sounds absolutely terrifying. To make things even worse, but on the morning of February the 1st, 2016, the apartment's tenants reported the smell of smoke emanating from the voodoo temple beneath them. Feeling worried, they decided to call the fire department, and as it turns out, an electrical fire had broken out beneath them. And although everyone was safe, the entire temple and some of the apartment went up in flames, therefore ending the apartment's long string of tenants. In the aftermath of the fire, the entire building was refurbished into a museum, which to this day is known as Bloody Mary's Tours, the Haunted Museum, and the Voodoo Shop. Now, perhaps this is a strange result of our morbid fascination with death and murder, but essentially, the place has been turned into an exact replica of Zach and Addie's apartment, with the original bathtub and appliances used in her murder still existing to this day. This was a rather controversial move by the owner, who was sure to upset some locals and many of Zach's and Addie's families. But despite everything, it still operates to this day. With so much poverty, pain, death, and damage to 826 North Rampart Street, I think it's just about time to demolish it and start again. But then again, I guess it would be a shame to lose that old American architecture if you can look past the dinginess. Now, here's a bizarre side note, but if you've been watching me for a while, you will likely remember the case of Jaron Lockhart, who, tragically, was dismembered by a very dysfunctional couple. Well, it turns out that one of her murderers, who was named Margaret Sanchez, was actually one of Addie's friends, which is a very eerie coincidence. The strange thing is that Addie's death was several years before Jaron's murder, meaning that Margaret must have experienced the pain, confusion, and turmoil of a friend not only being murdered, but also dismembered, and then went to do the exact same thing. Anyway, folks, I'm gonna wrap this case up here today. Before I go though, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and thank you for watching another video by Coffeehouse Crime. As always, if you want to support me in the channel, you can check out my Patreon here, or alternatively, check out my social media here, most notably my Instagram. I'll be back again next week, probably for 2 videos, but we'll just see how things go. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today, and as always, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.
That was one of the most strangest coffee mans we have watched in a long time, y'all. I didn't even expect it to get that freaking crazy. Like, what the is going on? You know what I'm saying? It's just the main things like I was talking about earlier. The fact that he freaking started dismembering her body and just leaving it, putting it all over the house, like that was so freaking crazy. But another thing that is so crazy is just the house itself. Like when the title say House of Horrors, this literally is a house of horrors. Just because number one, the whole voodoo aspect of it. Number two, it's in New Orleans, you know what I'm saying? That make it even crazier. And then number 3 is that the house some kind of way caught on fire. Number 4, then it got renovated, and the people who renovated it right now, and it's still known right now, I can't remember the name, something 100 houses, but it still got replicas of, not even replicas, the actual furniture and things up in that place that actually happened on the day of her murder. Like, it's just a lot of freaking strange things that going on in this case, y'all. I ain't lying, man. And I'm gonna keep it 100. I'll be real. If this place still exists one day where I can start to travel the United States like I want to, man, I will visit that 100 house place just to go see, man. Like, I am into that type of stuff, so I'm not even like, I know some people, and especially their family, may hate the fact that they have that thing going on in that place nowadays, you know what I'm saying, man? But to me, it is interesting. And rest in peace to her. And I'm not gonna say rest in peace to him. I'm not saying rest in peace to him, man, because he the one who caused all this mess. Just the way, like, he one of those people who, before he killed her, like, he had a plan together and he carried it out completely. You know what I'm saying, man? He said, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna live my best life for a couple of days, then I'm gonna kill myself, and when I kill myself, I'm gonna let everybody know about it. I'm not trying to hide nothing. Like, he just had this plan in his head and he carried it out. And another thing I want to say too real quick, my brothers and sisters, and I wish I can go into more details about all this stuff I be wanting to say, but I don't be trying to just keep going on and on, man, so I just try to touch on them. But the last thing I will touch on is the whole PTSD thing. That is real out here. PTSD is freaking real, man. A lot of these soldiers that fight for our freedom, they go through a lot overseas and in these wars and stuff, man. They see a lot of crazy ish, and some of that crazy ish can make them crazy. But it go back to, like, because I feel like PTSD, and it is, man, it's like a kind of mental illness. It's a certain type of mental illness, and y'all already know how I feel about that. It don't matter if you mentally ill or not. You do the crime, you gotta do the time. Long story short, story long. But I digress. I'm gonna let y'all go now, man. I appreciate y'all being on back here on another Coffee Man Friday. Y'all make sure, if y'all have the chance, that y'all come watch the Nick Crowley show tomorrow on our very first live stream reaction. And I got other things that I want to go over with y'all. And before then, just please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that if you ain't did that yet. And remember this: love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.